Good morning, HBS Beauty Fishes. This is your weekly lesson with Miss Walden. Your objective for this week is you're going to be able to use directional terms and regional terms as part of your everyday on-the-job language with accuracy. That means that if you were a medical professional, you would be able to use those directional terms from last week, such as superior, inferior, lateral, medial, proximal, distal, etc. And you're also going to learn 30 new terms this week. Some of them you're already going to know and will be very easy, and some of them will be brand new to you. But those are called the regional terms. So every body part has a name, of course, but also every region of your body has a name. So for example, from here to about here, my lungs and my heart live inside the thoracic region or the thoracic cavity. But below that, my stomach and intestines and liver and pancreas and all that other good stuff, that lives in my abdominal cavity or abdominal region. So you're going to learn 30 new regional terms this week, and you're going to add them to your 12 directional terms from last week. So I wanted to pull up activity 111, which was the assignment from last week. And in a nutshell, you were going to tell me what a body system does and what a body system contains. Okay, now that part is just some basic research. You can look up what organs are part of the cardiovascular system, or what does the cardiovascular system do. Now the fun part of this activity, and the part where you're really going to have that information stick, is this third column. I guess it's the fourth column, but the third column that you're actually filling out. And that's the amazing facts column. And you have one shot, dudes, to get some really amazing facts that are gonna blow my mind and blow your mind. And I want incredibly cool facts. So if your fact is the heart pumps blood around the body, I'm gonna be very sad. And I might not even give you full credit. I want facts that are like, whoa, I didn't know that. So the best way to find facts like that is to type something into Google like amazing facts about the respiratory system and click on a few different sources and read through them, because when I do that, I find facts that are seriously super cool and I find facts that are seriously super lame. Okay, so find something that blows your mind, and bonus points if I don't know it and it blows my mind. And that happens every single year. I do not know everything, especially these random facts. So I did an example for you, and that is red blood cells make 250,000 trips around your body. That's insane. That's so much. So they make 250,000 trips around the human body before they return to the bone marrow where they die. And the weird thing is, the bone marrow is actually where they were also created. So it's a beautiful, wonderful circle of life for you there. So the bone marrow creates new red blood cells, and that's also where old red blood cells go to be degraded and murdered. Okay, so keep going, fill out the rest of your chart. There's a whole bunch of other body systems for you to tell me what do they do, what organs are part of them, and then this column is my favorite and most important. What is your amazing fact about the urinary system? What is your amazing fact about the muscular system? And please try to impress me. I deserve it. Okay, now a lot of you already did the chart and you just emailed it to me. Like, thanks, miss, here's my activity for the week. But unfortunately, below the chart, there are several more things for you to do. Sorry. Okay, now the first thing that I want to point out is step 4. I'm getting a lot of questions about step 4, and I'm also getting a lot of students that don't even bother trying step 4, but I really want you to do step 4 because this is what the activity is about. So number 4 says, a secondary body system is a body system that is also involved in a process with another body system. In each of your amazing facts in the chart below, or in the chart above, highlight any organs or tissues or functions that belong to a different body system, okay? Then write the names of any of those secondary body systems below each fact. Okay, that sounds like a lot, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So here's my fact for the cardiovascular system. Red blood cells, so those are part of the cardiovascular system because that is your heart pumping your blood, going through your blood vessels, your veins, and your arteries, okay? They make about 250,000 trips around the human body before returning to the bone marrow where they were created to die. Can you find something in this fact that does not belong to the cardiovascular system, that is not having to do with the heart and blood vessels? Why, yes, the bone marrow. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bold that and highlight it so it stands out. Okay, so I highlighted anything that was not part of the cardiovascular system. And then below, I'm going to write bone marrow equals, what system is your bones? What system is that? That's your skeletal system. Okay, so that's what I did. I highlighted anything that was not part of the cardiovascular, and then I wrote down what system it was a part of, and these are secondary body systems. And what that means is the fact is about the primary system, which is the cardiovascular system, but the body systems work together. So, I mean, literally, your blood is born inside of your bones. So your skeletal system really impacts your cardiovascular system. If you didn't have bones, you wouldn't have blood, so that's a big connection there. All right, second example. Now, these I've added onto this document, but they're not on your document. So I want you to do your own fact for respiratory system and your own fact for endocrine system, etc. So, respiratory system, it brings in oxygen, it gets rid of carbon dioxide, we all know that. And it contains the lungs and also all those tubes that get the air from your mouth or nose to your lungs. So bronchi are the tubes that split off to each lung. The trachea is your windpipe. Hey, that was from the crossword puzzle in the escape room. Anyway, here's my fact. Lungs float. They're the only organ that floats. Any other organ sinks to the bottom right away. So coroners can actually use something called a lung float test to determine in an autopsy of a baby if they were born alive or if they were born dead. And what that means is they're stillborn. So sometimes babies die in utero, sometimes babies are born alive and die shortly thereafter. Now, the reason a coroner would be doing an autopsy on a baby to figure this out is maybe they found a baby, like a deceased baby's body, and the mother said, it was born as a stillborn and it died right away and da-da-da. But they can actually determine if that baby was born alive, and maybe there's some foul play. So maybe that mom had something to do with that baby's death on purpose. So what they can do is they can take that baby's lungs, and if the lungs float, that means that the baby was born alive. And if the lungs sink, that means that the baby was in fact stillborn or died inside of the mom's uterus. And this method is actually very accurate, 98% accurate. So I'm going to scan through this fact, and I'm going to be looking for any other body systems besides the respiratory system. So remember, these are the parts of the respiratory system. Is there anything in here that belongs to another system? In my personal opinion, is no. I mean, I guess you could highlight baby and put reproductive system, but that's kind of a stretch. So actually, I don't have to do anything for this one. Okay, scrolling down to my third example, the endocrine system. So the endocrine system is the system of hormones. So any hormone in your body, from estrogen to testosterone to insulin, that's part of your endocrine system. So endocrine means hormones in glands, okay? Now, you've probably heard of diabetes before, and it's a disorder where if you eat sugary food, your body does not know how to regulate your blood sugar, and so your blood sugar goes crazy high, which can cause a whole bunch of issues. So a lot of people might think that diabetes is actually a digestive system disorder, but that's not actually true. Insulin is a hormone, and insulin is the thing that's going awry in diabetes. So diabetes is actually an endocrine disorder. Now, my fact is, in diabetes, sugar levels in your blood can be way too high, especially when you eat sugary foods. Extra sugar is pulled out of the blood by the kidneys and gets excreted in the urine. Before modern testing, the test for diabetes was to taste the urine. Yes, your doctor would have you pee in a cup, and then they would taste it right then and there in front of you to determine if you had diabetes. Okay, now luckily, that's not how they test for it anymore. But that is my fun fact. And if you look up what diabetes means, it actually means sweet fountain. Gross. Okay, now in this fact, I'm going to be scanning for secondary body systems. So that means that body systems that are not the endocrine system. So insulin is a hormone, so that's endocrine. Diabetes is the endocrine system. So let's see. In diabetes, sugar levels in your blood can be way too high, especially when you eat sugary foods. So blood is not part of the endocrine system. We already talked about blood. Extra sugar is pulled out of the blood by the kidneys. Okay, your kidneys are not part of your endocrine system. And they get excreted in the urine. So extra sugar gets pushed out into the urine. I'm going to highlight urine as well. Before modern testing, the test for diabetes was to taste urine. If it tasted sweet, it was a positive diagnosis for diabetes. Okay, there's actually one more word that I am going to highlight, and that's eat. So it's not an organ, but if you scroll down to step 4, it says highlight any organs, tissues, or functions that belong to other body systems. So eating is definitely a function of something else that is not the endocrine system. So I have 4 words highlighted here, and I'm going to write them down here. So the first one is blood. What is blood a part of? Hint, it's from a couple seconds ago when we were talking about the cardiovascular system. Fabulous. And I'm just going to bold this. Okay, the next word that I highlighted is eat. So eating is part of your digestive system. And then the last one, kidneys/urine. I highlighted both because they go together. So kidneys and urine are in the urinary system. Okay, and the kidney's job is to filter the blood, and whatever it filters out is actually what urine is. So urine is like blood filtrate. Okay, so you're going to fill in the rest of the chart for all the other body systems. You're going to write your amazing, awesome fun fact, and then you're going to highlight for extra body systems or secondary body systems, and then tell me what those body systems are. Okay, so that's what step 4 is. Now, the rest of it should be pretty self-explanatory. Step 5 is you've got 12 directional terms that you need to define. You can just write those right here in the activity. So you can say, oh, anterior means this, and posterior means this, and inferior means this. Okay, so you can just write those definitions right here in the activity. If you'd rather write them on paper, you're welcome to do that. After you've defined those words, you're going to write each one in a sentence, and each sentence should have 2 body parts, because when you use directional terms, you're comparing 2 things. You're not just saying, my nose is superior. Your nose is superior to what? My nose is superior to my lips. And that means it's above my lips, because my nose is actually not superior to my eyes. My nose is inferior to my eyes. So my nose is superior to my mouth. My nose is inferior to my eyes. So you're going to write a sentence for superior and anterior and posterior and all these 12 directional terms. Okay, and then the last thing is on a body system organizer, which you're going to hear that term a lot. That's this little outline of a dude. You are going to label the directional terms with arrows, okay? And what I mean by that, I've given you one example here. So superior means up towards the head, and inferior is the exact opposite. It's away from the head, down towards your toes. So I made a double-sided arrow where superior was labeled pointing up and inferior was labeled pointing down, and your job is to do that and label the rest of these 12 directional terms, and also, of course, add superior and inferior to yours as well, okay? Now, if you are fancy and you know how to do this on a computer, feel free. I made mine on PowerPoint using just little text boxes and just typed the words right in there, or you can just draw an outline of a guy in your notebook and just label them with the arrows and the words, okay? So either way, and you'll just take a picture of that and email it to me. along with activity 111. I never care if you do things on paper or if you type it into the document unless I specify, okay? So either way, whatever works for you, but you're gonna be doing your first body system organizer this activity 111, okay? And you might get another one this week for labeling your directional terms and regional terms, okay? Those 30 new regional terms. All right. Moving back to our agenda, so in live class, we're also going to be watching a video today, and this video is going to help you learn those directional terms from activity 111. So if you haven't done that yet, this is going to help you, and if you have done it, this is just going to reinforce what you've already done.
In this video, we'll be discussing anatomical directional terms. Anatomical terms help us to identify the location of both internal and external body structures. Most of these terms are used to identify where something is located on the body relative to another body part. These terms refer to the locations of human body parts as they occur in the universal anatomical position. The anatomical position is an upright standing position with arms at the side, palms facing forward, and both feet together. When we need to describe the location of a body part as being above or below another body part, we use the terms superior and inferior. When a body part is superior, it is considered vertically closer to the top of the head in the anatomical position. On the other hand, a body part is considered inferior if it is closer to the bottom of the feet.
So you can remember superior by thinking about if you worked somewhere, you would have somebody who was your supervisor, and they're actually above you, right? They make the rules because they're above you. So superior and supervisor have the same root word, which means above.
For example, with the abdomen as the point of reference, we could say that it is both superior to the pelvis and inferior to the chest. When we need to describe the location of a body part as in front of or behind another body part, we use the terms anterior and posterior. Like other anatomical directional terms, a body part being either anterior or posterior depends on the point of reference. Anterior is towards the front of the body, while posterior is towards the back of the body. For example, the nose is anterior to the ears. And using these same points of reference, we can say that the ears are posterior to the nose.
So when you're using these terms, don't forget that you're always comparing two body parts. So you're not going to write a sentence that says, the nose is anterior. Okay? You're going to write a sentence, the nose is anterior to, and you're going to write something that the nose is in front of. And yeah, the nose is in front of pretty much everything. So you could write, the nose is anterior to the eyes. The nose is anterior to the cheeks. The nose is anterior to the ears.
Please note that the terms ventral and dorsal are also used interchangeably with anterior and posterior when referring to both human and animal body parts. However, the terms anterior and posterior are mainly used for locating human body parts. If you want to describe the location of something that is relative to the middle of the body, you would use the term medial. To identify something located medially, you would create a midline division of the body. The midline is an imaginary line that goes from top to bottom and divides your body into two equal parts, left and right. When you have the midline, the body part that is closer to the midline division is medial to the structure farther from the midline. The structure that is farther away from the midline is referred to as lateral. Whether you use lateral or medial to describe a structure largely depends on the site you have to describe. Here are some examples. The bicep muscle in the upper arm is lateral to the pectoral muscle in the chest. Further, in the anatomical position, we could say that the pinky finger is medial to the thumb. Proximal and distal are used to describe the location of points on a limb relative to that limb's connection to the torso. The proximal site is the one that is closer to the limb's point of attachment, while the distal site is the point that lies further away from the point of attachment. As an example, the wrist is considered distal to the elbow, and the elbow is proximal to the wrist. Superficial and deep are the last two directional terms we will cover. Superficial refers to a location towards the surface of a body structure or organ, while deep is concerned with the location that is towards the center of a body structure or organ. For instance, if we look at a cross-section of the skin, the top skin layer, called the epidermis, is superficial to the subcutaneous layer.
All right. So the only thing I want to point out is proximal and distal are only used on limbs. So you could never say like the heart is proximal to the, because it's not on a limb. So if you're talking about on an arm, proximal means closer to the shoulder and distal means further away from the shoulder. And again, you have to use two body parts. You have to compare two things. So you can't just say, my fingers are distal. Yeah, they are, but what are they distal to? So my fingers are distal to my elbow, but my fingers are also distal to my wrist. And my wrist is proximal to my fingers because it's closer to the shoulder. So even though my wrist is very far from my shoulder, it's still more proximal than my fingers are. So my wrist is proximal to my fingers. And you can use these same terms using the leg. And instead of talking about the shoulder, you're obviously talking about the hip. So if something is closer to the hip, then it's proximal. And if something is further away from the hip, then it's distal. So your knee is proximal to your ankle, okay? And then the last place that you use proximal and distal, so you use it on the arms, you use it on the legs, you can also use it on fingers and toes, okay? But your finger has 3 bones in it, 1, 2, 3, okay? And one of those bones is closest to my shoulder, and one of those bones is furthest away from my shoulder. And these are your phalanges. But when you're only talking about one phalange, it's called a phalanx. So this is the proximal phalanx because it's the phalange that's closest to my shoulder. And this up here is my distal phalanx. What word is the fancy word for this one? Middle. This is your middle phalanx. Okay, so no fancy word there. All right, last but not least, y'all, thank you for showing up and watching the lesson of the week. Your job is to fill out this bell work question. So bell work this week is to fill in the blanks for these 5 sentences. And you're going to be using those directional terms that we just learned from the video or that you already defined in activity 111. So the heart is blank to your lungs. So your heart sits right in the middle of your lungs. Your lungs are actually like a little sandwich on your heart. So your heart's right in the middle and the lungs kind of go around it. In fact, if you look at lungs just by themselves, there's a big chunk missing out of both of them to actually support the heart, okay? So the heart is smack dab in the middle of your lungs. But what one of those directional terms are we going to use? The heart is blank to your lungs, closer to the midline of the body. Okay, so once you have filled out these 5 sentences with the directional term, the correct directional term, send me an email with your 5 responses, and that's how you're going to get points this week for the warm-ups, okay? So if you go into Q and you see that there is an activity that, or a graded assignment that says warm-ups for this week, this is what it is, okay? When you fill out these 5 sentences and you email me your responses, bam, you get those points, okay? So thank you so much for checking out the weekly video. I appreciate you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a good one.